Hi everyone, welcome and thank you all for joining us today. I'm Dina Hussaini, Customer Success Lead at DA, and it's my pleasure to introduce you to the topic of today's webinar, influencer marketing. In today's world, brands are always looking for newer ways to reach out to their audiences. And since this world is dominated in today's world with social media, influencer marketing is perhaps one of the best ways to actually hold a conversation with your audience and create an online community. Of course, as a brand, you'll need to actually know what the outcome of working with influencers is. You'll need to know or have an idea of what you consider to be success after it's all over, whether that's an increase in brand engagement or new audiences reached or anything else. In today's webinar, our Client Services Director, Sabine Khouri, will talk to us about the top changing consumer behaviors and the efficient ways for brands to leverage their influencer strategy for a lasting success. We're also joined by Nada Murad, Influencer Campaign Manager, who will discuss the Q&As at the end of the session and share with us her thoughts. So please make sure to drop all your questions in the chat box on the side and we'll get to them at the end. And for your information, a recording of this webinar will be shared with you and it will also be posted on our socials. So stay tuned and make sure you follow us. Thank you. Over to you, Sabine.
Thanks, Dina, and hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us on this webinar. I will start going now. As Dina said, we will talk today about the best techniques to leverage your influencer marketing for lasting success. We will talk about emerging behavioral trends in consumers, and we will also talk a bit about campaign measurements and reportings. I will make sure to keep it short and concrete, sharing just the main information for you guys. So yeah, let's start going. So let's start from the audience first approach. When you as a brand, you want to market your brand, your products and services more effectively, it's vital that you usually take an audience first approach to marketing. And the reason for that is that you want to reach the right audience, and even influencer marketing is not only about gaining followers. It's about connecting strongly with the customer and with your target audience. So how do we do that? The audience first approach to influencer marketing, it allows you, as I said, to understand online influence. And when you as a brand understand online influence, you will focus on your audience's needs and expectations. This will allow you to actually align your marketing efforts to what your audience wants. So this will translate at the end into the ability to either generate more awareness, more sales, more leads, and an increased revenue. Let's go a bit through the audience first influence cycle that we have. First of all, it's all about building an audience, and you can build an audience by deploying and working with influencers. Then you develop a brand, and this is all about developing strategical campaigns, and it's more about also identifying your own and developing your own brand identity, and then you have to product into the market your product, and this is where you make connection-based marketing, and throughout the full cycle, influencer marketing plays a huge role because this is where your audience is. They follow all these creators/influencers, and you want to make sure that you are reaching the right audience. So this leads us to the second section of our webinar, which is talking about the behavioral trends we are seeing from consumers online. I will share with you the top 3. Of course, there are many now trends from consumers in the market online, but these are just the top 3 that we can have a look at. And these behavioral trends will affect also your strategy when it comes to influencers. The first trend that we will talk about is the CauseLED Thinking. So nowadays, consumers are actively expecting brands to take a stand that matters to them. So whether be it raising awareness about, let's say, a humanitarian cause, organic farming, sustainability, animal welfare, anything that consumers can rally behind, this is what they are looking for now. And as a brand, there's something that we call marketing that matters. This is what you need to look at, the full picture. You need to see how you can elevate this higher cause to meet your consumers' requirements. Of course, you need to make sure that the cause that you are talking about is relevant to either your product or your service, because we cannot jump, let's say, on a sustainability trend while us as a brand, for example, are not applying this. So this is, of course, something we need to be careful of, but it's something we can integrate in our influencer strategies. The second trend that I want to talk about is the thirst for authenticity in consumers and in the content. So authenticity has always been the calling card for influencer marketing, and its success lays in the fact that consumers, they trust influencers more than brands, because influencers also, they know how to, they look authentic, they know how to share the message. So brands have to ensure a consistency of messaging within their influence selection and strategy. So if influencers themselves start to compromise on that perceived authenticity, then that's going to close the gateway to that audience. So as a brand, you need to make sure that you work with influencers who will look authentic and genuine. And the reason why also we see this trend is we can see that consumers, there is an appetite for authenticity in the consumer and content that is growing on the channels through the kind of engagement. So people are engaging more and more with less polished formats, whether be it stories, reels, Snapchat, lives. The consumer is engaging more with this type of content and it resonates more with them, instead of, for example, having just a simple flat lay, for example, image. So anything that influencers create that is genuine to them, this is what the consumer is interested in. And the key for a brand to achieve this is by being consistent. So basically, when we do our influencer selection, we need to make sure that we go through the audience data, their affinities, what they like, what they don't like. We need to make sure that we are working with influencers/creators who are actually relevant to our topic, our brand, or our service, for example. The third trend that we will talk about is the online research and shopping. We all know now that consumers are using social networks to research and shop from brands. And this started, like e-com also started since the pandemic in 2020, where everyone was at home, everyone was shopping online. So this has been a trend since 2020, and it's important as a brand to be where the audience is. Also, social platforms have been working since 2020 on keeping the users on the platforms. For example, we have Instagram, where you have the checkout feature at the end. This allows you to stay on Instagram instead of being redirected to a third-party website. So this is something very important to keep in consideration. And when the consumer is searching online, they are actually looking also for a human element to be behind the brand. And this is how we can connect the influencer marketing to this cause. So when an influencer is talking about your brand value, your brand mission, the products, they are being much more trustworthy, and this will lead for the consumer to be interested in purchasing the product. So these are the three behavioral trends that we talked about and what we need to make sure to keep in mind when we're looking into the consumer's behaviors, which will lead us to how we can also implement these and our strategies in order to succeed in our influencer campaigns. So now we'll go through a bit of techniques, or let's say strategies, that will help you succeed in your marketing plans when it comes to influencers. The first one is to have the influencer plan as part of the full marketing mix that you're doing. For example, you need to make sure that all the team members and all the departments are actually aligned with each other on one goal, to make sure that the brand strategy is all seamless and is all aligned and shared into one goal. We cannot, let's say, have influencer campaign about awareness from one team while another team member is aiming for sales. So either we need to work throughout a funnel with all team members and departments, or we need to share just one goal that we are all aligned with. And of course, the reason for that is if all departments are aligned, and if influencer marketing is aligned with the full strategy, this will lead to more sales. Second one is thinking on the long term and having an always-on approach. So the success factor for this is that your brand will be on top of mind when it's time for this audience to make the purchase decision. Why? Because you are being consistent and present on social throughout the year. And this is not only for influencers. So with influencer partnerships, you need to work on long-term collaborations, of course. But also as a brand, in parallel, you need to be present on social media as always on. It works simultaneously with each other. So you need to make sure that you're always there, you're always present, so you're always also on top of mind of the audience and the consumer. The third one is building on brand community. So this is more about which type of influencers to pick. By working with these influencers, these are, I would like to call them the experts on the ground who have spent, let's say, some of them many years building and cultivating their audience. So as a brand, you need to trust them and also lean on their expertise. So at the end, it's all about trust. So you need to work with influencers that you can actually trust to be positive ambassadors to your brand and that can help you get the message out there and help your brand resonate in the market. And how you do that is through these three pillars. So you need to keep, first of all, an open mind. You don't need to look into specific, let's say, like we mentioned before, this should be like a very nice flat lay, for example. You need to look at content that is very genuine and that fits with your brand. You need to also grant the influencers creative control. So instead of having a specific copy that you just give the influencer to copy paste, for example, or dictate to them exactly what to do throughout their videos or content, you need to allow them to be themselves and be authentic, of course, while they stick to the brand guidelines, to your brand identity. And the third pillar is the loyalty of this influencer. So when you identify influencers, you need to see if, for example, they've previously used your brand, or if they previously worked or used with similar brands, for example. If their content, if their style matches your brand identity. This will allow you to look for creators who will show excitement for your brand. And when these creators, influencers, are happy and excited to work with your brand, these are the ones who will be loyal also for your brand and will be working with you as always on. Here we will talk about jumping in on viral trends. Of course, there are always now with TikTok also as a platform, there are a lot of viral trends always going on. And we need to think about a central idea of which trend to jump on that aligns with our brand. The audience should see like a natural link between your brand and the trends conversation. So if a specific trend is not relevant to your product, we can just ditch it. We cannot jump on all trends, but we need to always keep looking out for these trends, either by monitoring specific hashtags or through data. For example, recently there was the butterboard trend, and we jumped on it with one of our clients, and it was actually a successful one. But of course, if you don't work or have clients, or you're not a brand that fits within this trend, it's better to avoid it than to jump on something that is not relevant to you. Which leads us to data. So the most important thing of the whole success of an influencer campaign is not being intuitive and mainly focusing on data. So if you choose to focus on data, you will be better prepared, and this will increase your chances to succeed. Basically, you need to make sure that data is there whenever you are planning, whether be it data when it comes to picking your influencers or reporting at the end of a campaign. It should always be there because it will show you key figures, which we will talk about later in the next section. But keeping this in mind, so data with the always-on approach, this is the main key for your strategy, and this is what will help you to succeed at the end. Which leads us to how we can use specific metrics to actually amplify our strategy. So in addition to choosing creators who are aligned with your brand's mission, of course, it's very important to do that, but it's also important to look for creators whose audience is engaged with their content. So where they have actually strong engagement from their followers. It should be a mix of both, because also a strong engagement from the followers means that they are interested in what the creator is talking about, and they are actually interacting with their content, whether be it through likes, comments, saves, reshares of the content. So all of these are metrics to keep in mind when you are planning your strategy. So this will let you invest a bit of your time and resources, but for the better worth for the end. So you need to invest a bit of time looking at data, which platforms you want to use, which platforms is your audience the most engaged in, where is the engagement coming from the most, and which main KPIs you want to focus on for your strategy. And what's interesting is that at DA we actually do this, and I will show you just a sample of how we actually identify our influencers here at Digital Ape. So if you can see here, this is just a sample from our dashboard, but we have our own Arabic first AI driven technology, which is called Sila, which means connections in Arabic. And through this platform, we can identify influencers, we can predict their engagement, their numbers, amongst many other metrics. So this is just a sample of a creator's dashboard here. The main thing for us is we look at the active reach of this creator, we look at the engagement, we also look at their trust score. Basically, the trust score shows you how many fake followers they have versus real followers. And this is very important for us to know, because sometimes you would have a macro influencer who has more than 1 million, 2 million creators, but when you look at their trust score, it's really low, because most of these creators have purchased followers or have fake followers. So it's something to keep in mind when you're working on your strategies. Also, what's nice here is that we can see the target audience, their demographics, where they are located. It helps you to build your strategy in case you have key markets you want to focus on. It helps to identify the key markets of these creators also. We can also look, and it's something very important that I mentioned before, which is the audience affinities. So basically what your audience likes, who they follow, who they engage with the most, who they like the most. This helps you along with the numbers and the data. You also have the affinities and what the audience likes. When you mix these two together, you will be able to identify the influencers that will fit perfectly with your influencer strategy. Oh, sorry. So this leads us into how we can measure and actually report our campaign. So we spoke about how we can identify our creators, but now once the campaign is running, how can we measure it and how we can keep on reporting? For us, it's very important as a brand to keep on tracking the performance of the campaign throughout the campaign. And this is good for marketing effectiveness and also to plan for your next campaigns. So there are 3 steps that you can work on. First of all, you need to align your influencer campaigns to strategic business goals. So you need to sit and set your goals. What are you aiming for? Is it an increase in sales? Is it raising awareness? Educating the consumer, inspiring the consumer with the recipes, for example. So once you set these goals, you need to set the campaign objectives, this is where you identify your KPIs. For example, if you want to raise brand awareness, you should track metrics like reach, impressions on the influencer post. And what you can do is also compare this to the performance of your own posts on your social media channels. So throughout when the campaign is running and when the influencers are actually posting, you can also see how the engagement is being affected on your own social media channels. And in case you want to increase sales, for example, you can give an influencer a unique code, like a discount code, or even a link, a trackable UTM link to share with their audience, for example, where they can swipe up and get redirected to a specific landing page where you as a brand can track who landed there and also who made the purchase order. So all of this will help you identify what you want to achieve at the end. Is it sales? Is it reach? Is it impressions? Is it brand awareness? And of course, the last step is, and what we recommend, is to always do an ongoing monitoring throughout the whole campaign. Whether the campaign is for 1 year or 1 month, you need to have someone or a platform where you can monitor what's going on with the post. This could be done through the dashboards, through constant reporting, through gathering insights, for example, from Instagram stories, from the creators. So ongoing monitoring is something very important to do because it will allow you to see how the campaign is going and what you can do to actually work on improving it, for example. And a bit at DA how we actually create these measurable influencer campaigns. So as I mentioned before, we have our unique AI consumer intelligence platform still up. And through this platform, this is where we also have all of our influencers and also all of our influencer campaigns. And once we set all the goals and the metrics that we want, we actually define the audience. And then we actually have a dashboard that we create and that we keep looking at. This allows us to have, as I mentioned, a live tracking of the campaign to help us monitor the performance, and in case there's any changes that need to be done, we can do it. And then at the end of the campaign, and for you as a brand, we can report with transparency. So you have all the data there visible. Everything is taken from the influencer's content, of course. This is where you can discuss the relevant insights that you got from the campaign, whether be it from the comments that you got on the influencer's post, because you can also understand what the consumer is thinking. So is it positive? Were there any negative comments around the brand, around the product itself, for example? Through even the stories insights. Now, as we know, stories, they have a lot of interactive options, for example, such as polls, questions, so people can interact, and you can use them a bit as if you're doing a survey, which will help you by the end of the campaign to have relevant insights and see what could be the next steps for another campaign, for example. So this is basically how you can measure your campaigns and see the effectiveness of your campaigns. And this leads us to the key takeaways of our webinar. So the main key takeaway is to scale your strategy holistically. So basically what we said is we need to pick genuine influencers for the brand, and you need to work with content creators whose audiences are already engaged with them, because it means they are interested with what this creator is saying and doing. And then you need to base your strategies on data. You need to set defined KPIs and metrics to track throughout the campaign. And of course, you want to build a community with lasting connections, whether be it with the influencers themselves or with your audience. So as a brand, you want to make sure that you know what the outcome is of working with influencers, like Dina mentioned at the start. It could be you want to increase your brand awareness. It could be you have a new offering you want to present to the market. Perhaps your brand is new on social and you just want a push for engagement, for example, on your social media. This is where influencer marketing is a new, not very new now, but is a way to do actually that. And of course, you want to aim for conversions. It's very important, and it's something always on top of mind whenever a brand is doing a campaign. But influencers, first of all, they can help get the word, get the word out about your products and services in a way that is more authentic than when it's coming from the brand directly. And through that, it can get that end effect of generating those sales. And of course, data is always key. Like we mentioned before, maybe you want feedback on a new service you have. Influencers will give you real world feedback because it's genuine, it's from people who care about them, who follow them. And last but not least is building a community. So building a community is the best way for you to increase your objectives, no matter what your objective is, whether it's awareness or whether it's sales. You need at the start to build a community from the top until you arrive at the sales. People, they usually want to be brand advocates for you, and then the best way to do that is to work with someone you can trust as an influencer to be this brand advocate for you. So my advice for you as a brand, you need to think what your goals are. You need to start from there, and then based on this, build the influencer partnership based on data, genuinity, and everything we spoke about in this webinar. Now, the last thing is I'll take you a bit through a small case study for a campaign that we've actually done for Starbucks Ready to Drink. This was back in 2020. This was when there was the COVID, and Ramadan 2020, it was difficult for people to actually, it was lockdown, it was difficult for people to actually meet each other. How could they celebrate? So there was a challenge for Starbucks Ready to Drink that they wanted to make sure that the brand is present during Ramadan 2020. This was our main challenge. So in order for us to apply an influencer strategy for them, first of all, we looked at the data and insights. We know that usually during Ramadan, there are specific traditions where people get together, for example. So we looked at our tools for insights about the Ramadan season, the previous 3 years, what are the main trends, what do people do, what they talk about. And we saw that the conversation was mainly around gifting and togetherness, people being together. And this increased more in 2019 when the pandemic started. And it kept on increasing until now. So Starbucks, of course, is a brand that is well known, and people know it in the GCC. But what we wanted to do is connect Starbucks with this opportunity. So based also on the data that we found that before suhoor and after iftar, there wasn't a lot of conversation going on with people. People were a bit quiet on social. So we found that this was the perfect opportunity for us to actually utilize these consumption moments with Starbucks and try to own these moments by making Starbucks closer to the people. So what we've done is we worked with approximately 8 creators on both Instagram and YouTube, and we tried to create that moment to link the Starbucks chilled beverages, coffee, to this moment. And we tried to make moment, let's say, with gaming with men, where they would play online games together while having Starbucks by their side, where we could have some Zoom catch-up calls with people between each other, friends between each other, family between each other, all with Starbucks by their side, because it allows them to have a really nice moment. So this is how we've done our campaign and how we utilized the insights and data that we had. And the good thing is that the campaign helped us to generate $120K in extra media equivalency and a 26.2% engagement rate, which of course contributed to a growth of the brand's sales in 2020. But just to put a note here, the aim wasn't to actually, the main objective of the campaign was more to raise awareness, which would lead to sales. And this is what we were aiming on doing throughout the campaign. So this is just an example of one of our case studies that we have. And that's it from my end. I hope you guys enjoyed it.
Thank you so much, Sabine, for taking us through this webinar. It was very insightful. Thank you.
Thanks, Nada.
Okay, so now we'll move on to the questions that we've received from our audience. To start off, we have a question where the audience is asking, you mentioned you usually do campaign optimization while the campaign is live. So how do you usually do this?
Okay, so usually when we do campaign optimization, as I said, we usually have live dashboards. So once the campaign is live, we set up our dashboards where we can track all the creators' posts that are being posted. And because we already set initial KPIs and goals that we have, whether be it engagement, video views, or reach, for example, once a creator starts posting, we can track live how the performance is of their videos. And this is where we can see, let's say, the comments we're receiving might be negative, for example, during that stage, or one of the creators, for example, underperformed compared to what we thought they would do. So this is where we look at the strategy and say, should we perhaps look at replacing the specific creator because maybe the audience wasn't too relevant at that time, or should we look at updating a bit the type of content that we are doing, letting the creator also be more authentic, because as I said, sometimes brands might push for specific things for a creator. So we look at different criteria along with metrics and the sentiment of the consumer to see what we can do and what we can adjust accordingly. Of course, one of the things that we also do is we make sure most of the time that if there's any negative feedback or comments throughout the campaign, for the creators to actually address this, which will also show more genuinity and also show that, okay, we are looking into what the consumer is thinking and we are working towards applying this.
Okay.
So yeah, that's it.
We also have another question from the audience. So they're asking, regarding the community, is the best way to build it by working with the same influencers every time?
Okay, so in terms of building a community, you have different approaches. You can work with the same influencers all the time, but this is only if they showed that, first of all, from their end, they are loyal to your brand, and second of all, if their content actually resonated well with their audience. So we need to work with one influencer, let's say, for 1 quarter or 2 quarters, and then evaluate their performance and see what their audience, how their audience reacted. Was the feedback positive? Was it negative? Did we get anything, any add-on from this influencer that helped raise awareness more of our brand, that helped raise sales about our brand? So usually it should be a mix. What we recommend is a mix of always on creators or ambassadors for a brand, along with a mix of new creators, because at the end of the day, as a brand, you want to reach new audiences. So along with the influencer who is your brand ambassador, for example, you want to have someone, new creators and new influencers, who will help you reach new audiences also. And this is how you can build the community.
Okay. Now, I'd like to ask you a question. So you spoke a lot about the importance of selecting the right influencers for your campaign. So usually, what type of influencers do you recommend the brands to work with? So in terms of working with micro and macro influencers.
Okay, so it should always be also a mix. So it depends, again, it goes back to what I said in the presentation, is to look at your goals as a brand. If you're looking to increase reach, brand awareness, visibility of your brand, then the macro influencers are your safest bet. But if you're looking to increase conversion, sales, it's best to go with micro-influencers. So macro-influencers, they can easily change your brand's perception because they reach a very large number of people. However, we need to keep in mind also that macro-influencers, their engagement rate is lower than micro-influencers, and because they have a very huge audience, they cannot reach all this audience all the time. So it's more about changing your brand's perception with macro-influencers. But when it comes to referral programs, specific UTM links, macro-influencers will help people know about this program or this promotion, but micro-influencers will give you subscribers because they are credible, relatable, and more genuine. So bottom line, as a brand, you need to work with a mix of both, and it should always be depending, of course, on the goals and keeping in mind, of course, the budgets that you have. Yeah.
Thank you, Sabine. At the moment, that's all the questions we have. We can wait a minute or two in case anyone else from the audience would like to ask anything else.
Sure.
Okay. So there's no longer any more questions. Again, thank you all for attending our webinar today. As mentioned earlier by Dina, we'll be sending you a recording of this webinar via email, and as well it will be published on our website and our socials. So thank you so much for joining, and have a great day. Bye.
Thank you. Bye. Thank you.